Captain's Pick, the FPL Podcast. Hello and welcome on board flight episode 36 of Captain's Pick, the FPL Podcast. This is your captain and host speaking, Geoff Willis, and each week I'll be taking flight to talk fancy Premier League football. You can find the show on a whole host of podcast services. Just search Captain's Pick. Please leave a review, like, share and subscribe. On today's show, I'll give my quick thoughts on the Champions League final and then give my review and reflections of my FPL 2018-19 season. So firstly, on to the Champions League. Liverpool winning that 2-0, and I think probably deservedly so in the end. Not the greatest of games to watch, I'll be honest. A little bit better than the Chelsea-Arsenal match, to be fair. But it did feel like both teams were struggling a little bit to find their rhythm. Of course, the early goal for Liverpool, I think that sort of dented Tottenham's confidence quite a bit. But it did take quite a lot for both teams to really get into the final. I did think around the hour mark that Spurs really did start to come into the game. Had a fair few chances, and I think if they'd got one of those, I think the momentum definitely would have shifted towards them. Because I don't think Liverpool ever really sort of got out of first or second gear. But obviously the second goal really just then killed off the game. So I think Liverpool deserved it in the end. Spurs just didn't really do enough. Say, I think if they'd got one of those chances that came around just after the hour mark, could have been a very different result in the end. And I think I might have actually fancied Spurs if they could have draw level at that point. But in the end, I think deservedly so for Liverpool. They've had an amazing season, really. Any other season would probably be walking away with the Premier League and the Champions League. And I still think Spurs did amazingly well to get to the final. Their final, in a sense, was that amazing semi-final win over Ajax. And I think both teams did amazing to get there. But I think Liverpool, over the course of the competition, probably deserved to get the trophy in the end. Okay, so going on then to my sort of review and reflections of my FPL 2018-19 season, and it's sort of where to start really. Well, we'll start at the end and sort of and then I think we'll jump to the start and make our way through the season. So finished on 2,211 points with an overall rank of 234k. And I made a total of 47 transfers, and in the end, by the last game week, my squad value was 102.6. In terms of my overall points and ranks since 2013-14, this is my highest points total ever. Previous best was 16-17 with 2,138. So there's a good 73 odd points better off. Last season I got 2,134 points, so beat last season's score as well. But in terms of in terms of overall rank, best overall rank was 16-17. Where I got 155k. This actually came in as my second best season at 234k. And I beat last season by... so last season I finished 329k. So that's... what is it, nearly 90 odd k better off this season. So definite improvements, massive improvements really from last season. Obviously not my best ever rank, but all I can do is beat my previous total points score in last season's and see where that leaves me in the overall rank. Say the target at the start of the season was to get inside the top 100k, and when you look at the actual points of the people that were in the top 100k, if I just look this up now. A friend of the show, Mark Downer, he also beat me in our mini league, very much my rival. He was on 2,278 points and finished 86k. So comparing that to me, so it's really 60 points in it. So probably he was 85k, so maybe 55 points, and I would have been in the top 100k, which isn't a lot, really. So I still think that was definitely achievable this season. And if just a few things had gone, slightly different, slightly gone in my favour, definitely could have achieved that top 100k. But so I can't complain at all really this season when you look at my history, best overall points and second best overall rank. So and in terms of the other targets, so it's inside the top 100k and finish top in my main two mini leagues. In one I came second, it's back-to-back seconds in that one. Again, 60 points off Mark, who won that mini league. And he was won that league 3 times in a row now, so trying to wrestle that away from him. So he's won that back-to-back seasons. He'll be looking at winning it 3 times in a row next season, but I'll be definitely looking to get my first championship win and deny him the hat-trick of titles. And in my other mini league, where I was the back-to-back champion in, and I actually came third in that league, about 50 points behind leader and friend of the show, Digby Gall. And me and him really have shared the championship in this league over the years. But him coming away with that 50-point lead there. I'd won this back-to-back titles in this one, so I was happy. Well, not happy, but not too disappointed to win this one. It would have been nice for the hat-trick of titles, but there we are. And in terms of reflecting on those goals, really, I think next year definitely one of the goals will be, again, to win those main 2 mini leagues, to get a better overall points total than this season, and then obviously this was my highest points total so far. So if I beat that next season, that will be then my best overall point score. Again, target is still within the 100k mark, but that does seem to be the amount of players now playing the FPL game, 6.5 million. That may have to be revised, but I think it's still a nice target. But as long as I keep beating my previous best overall point score, I think that's all I can really do. And hopefully, as a byproduct of that, I'll be inside the top 100k. But certainly adding, I think, the overall points, getting that to be the personal best each season is definitely could well probably be my main aim, I think, because that's really where it shows improvement, I think, because the amount of players changes each season. But hopefully inside that top 100k. And then, so that's the sort of the season history compared to this season. In terms of how my game week histories went, looking back at the 38 game weeks, after game week 16, was where I got my best score of the season, 105. That was the Salah hat-trick away at Bournemouth, where I captained him. And I had a game week, probably my best ever in the game week rank of just 14,085. So that was incredible game week for me. Took me up to 70k, and that was my highest overall rank I achieved all season. And it really just went completely downhill from there. Literally, let's look. So from there until game week 29, so about 13 game weeks there. Game week 29. I dropped to 434k. So that's a 360k rank drop in about 12 weeks, which is pretty horrendous. In that run, there was just 2 green arrows, and from game week 23 to game week 29, I had 7 red arrows in a row. And I think that's where my season, the downfall really happened. Up until then, I was really happy with how the season was going. I think at game week 19, I was at 89k, so inside the top 100k. Pretty good team value. And going into that Christmas period, was feeling pretty happy. And obviously things just went completely downhill. Got some really awful scores in that period. So I think certainly lessons to be learned will be going into that Christmas, New Year period. I didn't wildcard early. I wildcarded later on around the double game weeks, which was I wildcarded in game week 34. So potentially an early wildcard in the new year, potentially. Obviously, it depends on how things are going. But maybe I was a little bit too patient, and in that period there was about the same amount of 7 red arrows. Actually, I was saving my 2 transfers, using them, saving my 2, using them, saving my 2, using them. So there was weeks there that I wasn't using a transfer at all, and I wonder if that really hit me in the end. I thought it was actually doing quite a good thing by saving the transfers, and so I could hit 2 every 2 weeks. Clearly didn't work, and potentially I guess should have just wildcarded and done all those transfers in one hit. So I think that middle part of the season was really where it fell down for me, because from game week 29, where I was 434k, then the double game weeks came and I used my free hit in 32, wildcarded in 34, bench boost in 35, triple captain in game week 38, and in game week 35 I got back down to 189k from 434. So definitely using and saving some of those chips around the double game weeks, if they think they may be around there again next season. I think that's definitely a strategy I'll be doing again. Whether I save all of them for then, I don't know. Triple captain should have just used in that Liverpool Huddersfield game. I think I was trying to be, not sure it'd be too cute, but trying to make more advantage in my mini league, and ultimately I should have probably just played it. Did my original plan, which I'd said on the pod, and then went against it. Just should have brought in Salah and triple captained him, and brought in Mane as well to slightly cover my mini league rivals who did triple captain Mane. So wouldn't have made a huge difference in my mini leagues, but would have definitely seen me rise a lot further up in the rankings, and I think I might have been able to get into that top 100k, and probably would have been 30-40 points better off. But say in the end, after that game week 37 and 32 points, that hit me back. I dropped 50k, and then finished on 234k. So a few lessons learned there, I think. In terms of my game week points average, so I think I mentioned quite a few times over the season trying to achieve the 60 point a week average game points, and I did a little bit of data collection here, and my most so what I did is collected in 0 to 20 how many points I scored there, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, 50 to 60, and so on. And mostly I scored in that 40 to 50 bracket and the 50 to 60 bracket. Not too many below the 30, which obviously is very good. Next up was the 60 to 70 bracket, and then there was just a few that was higher than the 80 bracket. Obviously hit over 100 twice, which was really happy about. But I think for next season, again, it's just trying to boost the 40 point average game week points, getting those into the 50 points, and then again trying to shift the 50 point game week averages into the 60 points, and I think that will definitely see me rising and hopefully getting into that top 100k, because I think it's getting trickier and trickier to do that. And I certainly think, looking at some of the scores posted this year, 60 point average it's probably not good enough to get into the upper echelons. You're probably looking at potentially a 70 point average. When I did with my overall point score, divided it by 38, and it did come out at 58.21 or something like that. So around the 58 points mark. So again, not too far away from the 60, only 2 points, but if you times that by 2 times those 2 points by the 38 games, then yeah, you're looking at that 70 point, around that 70-75 point mark. And again, that would have seen me win both my main mini leagues, and would have seen me in the top 100k. So there's definitely something into it from when I was saying at the start of the season about trying to hit the 60 point average mark. If I had actually hit that, I would have probably achieved all my goals this season. So definitely interesting to sort of delve into to those stats and those details, and certainly trying to just increase those average game week points, moving the 40s and the 50 pointers each week and trying to get them consistently into the 60s. Of course, a lot of that is getting captaincy right, and I'll be talking about that in a second. The other thing I just did a little kind of stats detail really was to add up my overall rank for every single game week. So I added up every game week what my overall rank was for the 38 game weeks, and then I divided that by 38, and that gave me an average rank of 241,160, and my overall rank was 234k. So it's about 7k better off than what my average was suggesting. So really, looking at that, I probably finished where I averaged out to be. I was probably where I deserved to finish in terms of overall rank, because I say my average was 241k. So that actually was very interesting to do that. I was hoping my average rank would be higher and that I had actually just sort of screwed up a bit, but looking at that, actually beat my average rank score, and that actually made me feel a little bit happier in terms of I probably ended up roughly where I should have. So it also means that I needed to, again, become more consistent and not have those big, heavy overall rank drops. And I think that consistency comes with a lot more planning and obviously hitting my captain's picks a lot more. Started well in the first half of the season, but couldn't buy a good captain's pick in the second half of the season. Got a couple towards the end, but that's something certainly to be looking at next season. So, but I say that average of 241 that did made me feel a bit better, and I probably ended up where I deserved to be, and that's certainly a stat I'll be looking at into next season. Also wanted to look at team value, and I've noted that a lot of people higher up in the leagues had much better team value than me. I think the best that my team value got up to was 103.2, and that was just before my wild card. That was game week 18, and then then 103.1, and again that was just before my second wild card. But you're looking at teams with 104, 105, 106, 107 million, and they can afford a lot more players than I can. And I definitely saw that in the first 10 to 15 game weeks, I just was not getting high enough team value, getting those price rises, picking out the players on lower prices and having huge price rises. I just don't think I hit any of those at all, really. So that's something I'm definitely going to be looking at next season, and certainly potentially using an early wild card as well. I think I'd planned to wild card in game week 8 or 9, ended up game week 10 is when I wild carded, and it just felt like I hadn't got enough increase in my team value before then, and probably was too patient and waited too long, because by that time I was around the 300k, even the 400k at game week 8. So where I had actually started well, I was at 78k from game week 3. So definitely team value is something I definitely need to look at. I thought I did fairly well with fixtures, planning fixtures in the first sort of 5, 6, 7, 8 game weeks. But a lot of the players that I'd had good fixtures that I'd planned didn't really come off. So it was I should have probably changed plan pretty quickly, and I don't think I adapted to that quick enough. And as I say earlier, picking my captain. Again, it's tough, but not enough times in the second half of the season did I have good captaincy options, maybe 2 or 3 good captaincy options in terms of transfers. From game week 1 to game week 10 or 11, I actually planned out pretty much every captain, and they all came off bar the Harry Kane one. He was in my side from the beginning, and he was in there for when he played Cardiff at home. Obviously, that failed. But up until then, obviously, we had the Salah and Aguero rotation, and all those came off. And it was just Kane, really, who let me down. But I'll be looking at doing some similar rotations, hopefully, with the fixtures next season. But certainly towards the end of the season, I just was not picking the right captain, and probably just didn't have the good enough options week to week in my squad. So that's a massive thing to be getting up to that, again, 60 to 70 point average where I think you need to be, and I think the same will be of next season. And then sort of the last thing to look at, I thought would be interesting to actually look at my game week 1 team from last season, and I actually had a great first game week of 83 points, game week rank of 174k. Started really well, but I thought I would sort of compare it to really how with my game week 38 team. So I had Pickford in goal, who had a pretty horrendous start, but ended up. I managed to get his 15-pointer in game week 9 before I transferred him out in my wild card, although he then went on and got 11 points in the next game. And even though Everton had a dodgy period there in the middle section, they came back massively towards the end of the season, and he ended up on 161 points with 14 clean sheets, with 7 of those coming in the last 10 games. So I don't think I would have kept him for the whole season the way it had began. I'm not sure anyone would have predicted those clean sheets towards the end of the season. I think I would have probably lost patience by sort of game week 26. And I'm sure he would have gone from the first or second wild card at that stage. But interesting to see that if I'd had kept with him, he was the third best goalkeeper in terms of points, only 8 behind Edison and 16 behind Alisson. So from a value point of view, he probably was the best goalkeeper. Though I don't think I would have had the gumptions to have kept him in this squad for the whole season. And really, I think looking at my defence, my back line, this is really where you see the sort of the downfall in my season. I think, even though it started fairly well, I had Charlie Daniels at Bournemouth, again awful at the back all season. He had a massive injury as well. They had a great set of fixtures beginning of the season, that's why he was in there, but they just had a shocker, and I should have got rid of him straight away. Again, early wild card, definitely. I had James Tarkowski, who actually started quite well. Wasn't getting clean sheets, but he scored a couple of goals. But again, Burnley, pretty awful season. They only ended up getting only 7 clean sheets. So again, but the fixtures were good at the start of the season, but should have maybe avoided them from the Europa League fatigue and that kind of thing. Certainly something I'll be looking out for in terms of Wolves, actually, although I think they'll be better equipped for Europa League. Again, similar to those last two players, Ryan Bertrand, Southampton, pretty shocking season for Southampton. He didn't start too bad. They got a couple of clean sheets, and he got a goal, but good set of fixtures to begin with, but it was never going to last. So again, he ended up with 6 clean sheets. So it's a balancing act between looking at who's got the good sets of fixtures at the beginning, but also looking at a player and thinking, can he stay in the team all season? And I think looking at Daniels, Tarkowski and Bertrand, potentially Pickford there as well, probably none of them would have stayed in the team for the whole season. Obviously they didn't. So I think it's a balance between players from maybe lesser teams but have got great fixtures, and probably keeping them more to the minimum, and hoping that they would do well, and then potentially keeping them in for the rest of the season. And the fourth defender was Mendy, who again absolutely smashed it at the start of the season. Assists galore and clean sheets, but obviously loads of injuries and form and all sorts going on behind the scenes there with Mendy. I'm sure if he hadn't have got injured and played the whole season, we would have been probably stayed in my side the whole season. Started off in that game week 1 with 15 points. So picked a Man City defender. In the end, obviously probably would have been Laporte. But so not great. And then my last defender was Wan-Bissaka, who was a great pick. Most of us in the FPL community seem to have picked him early doors, and he pretty much stayed in my squad for most of the season. There was a bit of a dip in the middle section, and maybe that coincidentally coincided with my dip in form But he started great. He was a great pick. Potential hearing of him going to Man United next season. So he's probably going to go up in price. So it'd be interesting to see. But he was probably, great pick. Really happy with him. Too many times though he was left on my bench and I didn't play him and he got loads of points. So, he was one of the ones that I was really happy with from day one. Probably could have stayed in the squad the whole season, I'd say. Moving into midfield, I did go with Salah, especially with that lovely captain rotation he had with Aguero. I only really didn't have Salah, so I had him for obviously that hat trick away at Bournemouth, and I was wildcarding. I'd wildcarded already, sorry, but my plan was to get rid of him the week after, which I did, and he did nothing against Man United at home, so I thought that was going to work out well. But then he went on and scored 8 goals in the next 7 matches, but luckily I only missed out on I think 2 of those matches, and I soon got him back in the squad. He should have never left for those couple of matches. He did come out my side when he had the bit of that barren spell between game weeks 27 and 32, so about 5 game weeks there. But then he finished off well. The last 5 games, he got 5 goals and 3 assists, and so overall, probably could have kept him the whole season. To be honest, a pretty decent captaincy option, certainly in that first half of the season. I think he slowed down in that middle period, and then he got going again towards the end. But a good pick. I was happy with him. Bernardo Silva, another one really that kept in my side for the first section of games and did pretty decent for me. Got a few goals, a few assists, and then he came out of the team. But he kept on ticking over. 7 goals, 8 assists, not too bad considering what his value. I think he started at 7 million. So not too bad. Would I go again there next season? Potentially not, although he was very much a regular at City, which is saying something for City. But I just, at that value, it's a strange value to be at, and I just don't think he's going to deliver enough goals and assists to warrant it. So it'd either be adding a couple mil on top, and getting up to Mane's, Sterling's, or just dropping the value down a couple of million for a cheap midfield enabler and using it elsewhere. My other midfielder, Richarlison, was a great pick for the first few games until he got his red card. Then we had the Theo Walcott incident. I'll leave it there. But kept on ticking over throughout most of the season. Scored 13 goals in the end. So a good pick. I'm sure if he hadn't got red carded, he would have stayed in my team, potentially for quite a bit of the season. Maybe towards the end, towards maybe the second wild card, I would have potentially got rid of him, or maybe in that middle spell where Everton weren't doing so well. But yeah, for his price at that 6 million, really happy with that decision. My 2 cheap midfield enablers, Lerma and Chalobah. Well, Chalobah barely played all season, so not great. But again, those are sort of punts really of cheap enablers that you hope might get game time and a few points here and there, but they're mostly going to be on your bench. The same with Lerma. Scored me a few points when he was in the squad. But again, cheap enablers. Probably some better options in the end. And again, maybe something to do next season, wildcard early and actually get some of the cheaper players who are actually playing week in, week out. Okay, they may only be on your bench, but they'll be getting you your 2s and your 3 points each week. And then my forward line, and I'd picked Zaha. Again, start of the season, had good fixtures and started fairly well. Got 3 goals in 5 games. And then he went on this huge barren spell at that point, as that's where I got rid of him. Came back into it a little bit towards the end of the season, getting 10 goals and 11 assists overall. Not bad for his price. It was always going to be interesting to see what he would do moving from a midfielder to a forward. In hindsight, don't think it works for him in terms of FPL, certainly. It's just not getting the amount of points you need, really, from a striker. Maybe as a midfielder, that would be perfect, and he may go back to a midfielder, I'm not sure. But if he was a forward again next season, if he was at Palace still, I don't think I'd consider him. If he'd moved to a top 6 club, potentially, but I think from an FPL perspective, he's better as a midfielder. I'd picked Firmino to start. It was a bit of my plan was to pick Firmino in the first game and transfer him out to Aguero in the second game, which is what I did. And of course, Aguero scored that hat-trick in the second game of the season, and I'd captained him as well. So that worked out absolutely perfect, a dream. Firmino just got an assist in that first game. Was never going to stay in my squad. It was always a plan just to not put in Aguero in the first game. I think it had a slightly trickier game, and put him in the second game, and that worked out an absolute treat. And again, so it was never my plan to leave Firmino in for the season. Didn't do too bad, 12 goals, 8 assists, but again, rather that money go elsewhere. Too pricey, really, not delivering enough. And then Harry Kane was my man at the start of the season. Had his best start of the season for a while, actually. Broke the August 2-2, got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 goals in the first 7 matches. So I couldn't complain with Kane at all. But it was in the 8th game which he really let me down. So up until then, that 7 games, I rotated between Aguero and Salah, and it worked perfect. Captaincy, absolutely perfect. And I thought, oh, perfect, I've had Kane in for those goals in the first 7 matches, and he'll be my captain at home to Cardiff. And as soon as I saw the rest of the FPL community rush to bring in Kane, taking hits left, right and centre to captain him, people triple captain him, I just had the worst feelings that it was going to be a massive jinx. And it was annoying because I'd planned for the first 8 games in terms of my captaincy, and so that's why I had him in for that start, for that opening period. And there was a part of me back then, I never would have risked this, of course, that having all those people bring him, I went through my mind, should I just transfer him out and bring somewhere else in, or just not captain him? But I just couldn't risk that. And it was my plan to captain him, so I wanted to keep with my plan and not be sort of distracted by all the noise around him. Of course, he failed, and that was my first captaincy fail of the season. And things sort of didn't really get too much better for Kane. A lot of injuries. I was going to bring him back in on my second wild card, where Spurs had a great set of fixtures. He got injured, of course, and never recovered from there, and picked up a second injury at the end of the season. So disappointing for him. Would have potentially stayed in my side for the whole season if he hadn't got the injuries. So it'll be interesting to see next season if he's still as expensive. But hopefully a bit of a rest this summer. May look to go with him again. See, he got 17 goals this season, but if you compare that to his last 4 seasons of 21, 25, 29 and 29 goals, this is the outlier. So I'm hoping he'll bounce back and get into those mid to high 20s. So depending on Spurs' fixtures, certainly at the start of the season, definitely keeping my eye on Harry Kane. And so that was my game week 1 squad, and just roughly looking at my game week 38 squad. Totally different. No players surviving at all. Ended up with the 2 Wolves players, Jimenez and Doherty, but Jimenez, I've pretty much missed out on all his points. That was the biggest mistake of the season, is not getting him in really early doors, and I think if I'd wildcarded early on, he would have come in. Doherty, though, I did bring in fairly early and got most of his points, so I was happy I jumped on him when I did. Similar with Robertson, brought him in fairly early doors, and it was great to get him in. Also brought in Alexander even earlier than that, Alexander-Arnold, but then he got injured, so I took him out for a fair chunk of the season, and that's where he started coming back in again, and just didn't get him back in again really quick enough towards the end of the season. Sterling had him at the end of the season, didn't really do enough for me, just missed out on most of his points throughout the season, so that was disappointing. Mane I didn't have at the start of the season when he was smashing it, and it looked like having him and Salah was the thing. But then he went on that massive barren spell, and so I was really happy I didn't have him. But then he came back into it towards the end of the season, and again missed out on all his goals and points from sort of game week 23, went on this great spell all the way to the end of the season really. So missed out on a lot of his. Bizarrely, my last transfer in game week 38, I brought back in Bernardo Silva as a bit of a punt, and he scored 2 points, so that didn't work. But he was the only player who finished in my team, who started in my team. Finished up with Aguero up front, who did pretty decent for me. Had him most of the season. There was a couple of times he got injured where I got rid of him, but I think the most crucial point where I didn't have him, and I was due to get him in, but when Kane, there was around that injury, I wasn't planning for Aguero, and it was when he smashed 3 goals against Arsenal and 3 goals against Chelsea in 2 game weeks, and a lot of people triple captained him there and captained him, and I don't think I had him. So again, that was that middle period during the 7 red arrows where I needed to get him then, and I didn't, and I'll definitely be trying to look out for points in the season next season where a player just goes into that massive purple patch and trying to pick up on that early, but not always the easiest of things. I finished off with Callum Wilson actually for the last fair few games and picked up a few goals here and there, which was quite nice. He had a good sort of start, sort of first 5th quarter of the season, had a bit of a lull during the middle, and then came back a bit stronger at the end. 14 goals and 12 assists from him. So his best season so far. Definitely one to watch out for next season. And so that was sort of how it started and how it ended for me in this sort of season-long review. And I think that's where I'll probably leave it there. Obviously, you can just over analyze everything, and I'll still be trying to dig out little details and things here and there, but I think those were the general points and sort of reflections really over the season that I wanted to talk about. And I'm sure now that I've had this in a podcast, I can listen back to it and sort of remind myself of a few of these points certainly throughout next season, and try not to make some of the mistakes I did make this season, and just trying to learn from all those points really. So I think that's where I'm going to land the show. On next week's pod, I'm going to have some quick thoughts on the released fixtures for 2019-20 season, which should be tomorrow. So I'll have a quick thought on those, but I'll be doing some deeper, further analysis on those in the summer. And then I'll give you my plans for the podcast next season. So feel free to send in any questions or topics you'd like discussed on the show to either the podcast Twitter account at CaptainsPickPod or the podcast email address captainspickpod@gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening to this in-flight podcast. I've been your captain, and until next time, it's been my pleasure to talk with you.
Captain's Pick, the FPL Podcast.